Nestor. I'm from the University of Massachusetts Amherst. I'm a graduate student there. When you first started talking about enculturation, I was imagining it as a sort of reciprocal relationship of influence, if you will, of sort of both cultures being enculturated. And as we've begun to discuss it more, it has seemed more and more that it is that we're treating it as a sort of monodirectional. And I see Professor Arduini's point about these three moments of enculturation, but it seems to me that only one of them, only this Christian moment of Christianization, is reciprocal in the way that I was imagining this. And I'm wondering how the idea of directionality plays into how you are framing enculturation as you are exploring this idea.
I'm very worried about any model that excludes otherness, excludes alteration, that this doesn't open the space for the voice of the subaltern, or the proletariat, or the person you're getting this text from, or the person you're sending it to. I'm very worried about this. You know, as I said, it's not necessarily a pretty thing, enculturation. It's the building of empires, after all. But you could apply it to the way the United States has developed a culture. Certainly, this is very much the various models that have been used and the constant retransformation of the self through bringing in otherness. We're in this double bind, you know. If I stick to a strict linguistic definition of translation, and I'm going back to that open question I've got, embedded in that is otherness, another language, another culture, a cultural otherness that is there in that bad old binary model. If I'm forcing that model into another one, it's like square pegs into round holes, where I'm banging away. I'm starting to see things that I didn't see before, not all of which are good. Directionality, yeah, something in me says, look, enculturation is happening, but it's not a good thing. Not always a good thing.
As it always happens, we have technology at the end. So if you can share that, and then I would give this to Antonio.
Really, do I have to speak with my question?
That actually, okay.
Just a couple of comments that I have. This concept of enculturation really looks a lot like anthropophagia. That was a concept developed a little bit by Elsevier. And I wanted to know if there is a difference between the two. And also, I'm not sure that I would understand Naida the same way that you exposed him. For Naida, there was definitely no change in the message. And it was a dynamic equivalence, but the message was not touched. It can be touched because the message of God. And then what comes out of that, actually Naida was localizing for and it is to change, because that change is ultimately the conversion of people. So I was a bit not understanding your argument there. As for Professor Spivak, I appreciate your talk so much. The last time I heard you speak was years ago in Princeton, and this looks great. Great compared to that. Maybe because you did maybe because you didn't read. And I really appreciate how you frame your argument. And we were just discussing with Professor Gensler of whether it was a well-articulated argument, and I think it is, and I thank you so much for that. This idea of the creolization of English and the inclusion of these impossibilities of translation into subaltern realities, and coming from a gender perspective where you are marked by your nation, your class, I really appreciate it. One thing I did not fully understand, I would like some explanation on that. There is a process of proletarianization and the process of subalternization that are necessary to increase capital. And this already was Marx's in the primitive accumulation and the secret of primitive accumulation. But what is the generalization? Moving a little bit out of that, it seems to be like a little other way around, and I don't fully understand that concept.
You know, what did you say? Did you say that the idea of proletarianization or subalternization was implicit in what?
In secret of primitive accumulation of
But what of capital?
To the accumulation of capital
Okay.
and
Well,
the development.
Yeah. Let me say what I thought I was saying, and thank you very much for your compliment. You know, since we don't have that much time, I won't ask you in that songist. I'm very happy that as you grow older, you get better. But I'm very interested in knowing what you heard. No. Okay. So what I was saying was that the process of capitalism, not accumulation, it requires that at the same time there is subalternization. And I gave the example of what's happening with so capital. I mean, as I say to my those subaltern folks with whom I work, capital is good, capitalism is bad. See, I'm a very simple person. So this is what I was saying, that you know, you can use capital for social welfare if the person is ethically trained. That's why the falling away of those elementary one-room schools is a bad thing, because that's where that training, as Theodor Shanin said, socialism is not about development, it's about justice. And the desire for justice is so counterintuitive that it really has to be made a habit of children thinking. So that's really what I was saying. And as for gendering, how it comes in there, see, what I was talking about was that gender is our first instrument. Sandy, you have heard me say this, I'm repeating, but you know, you can only repeat what you really think. Gender is our first instrument of abstraction. Because gender is a word. For the last 40 years it's gone around, but this phenomenon, it's the bigger than anything tacit instrument of globalization before you ever could think the globe. It is, excuse me, a very big word that I constantly use, a phrase, reproductive heteronormativity, RHN. We are in a double bind with it. You love your mother, you are in it. You hate your mother, you are in it. You are heterosexual, you are in it. You are making a gay marriage, you are in it. So it's not something, it's both capitalist and proletarian are in it, and so on. It's a very big thing. Because in order to create a system, you need at least two things, right? And although we can talk about many different kinds of differences, you know, two worlds and so on, the only difference that's empirically perceptible is not gender difference, but sexual difference, and the difference in secondary sexual development. With that, one begins to negotiate a system of the sacred and the profane. And what happens is, when in the metropole, because of capitalist history, which I can't say anything about now, there's enormous amounts of labor export, paperless immigration, etc., etc. When they are denied access to the class mobility, which is disguised as sort of cultural conflict and so on and so forth, at that point, that oldest, the most ancient of the validating institutions in the world kicks in. So that you begin to see, and sometimes what happens is just a little something that had changed goes back again, so that the women themselves think that this is liberation. You know, I mean, the Français Musulman, I'm for them, I'm totally for them. But on the other hand, this is what's happening. So therefore, that's, if you ask me to really talk in detail about gendering within this, I would have to go so far because it embraces everything where you wouldn't even recognize it. It's not like the usual feminist number of women women must be allowed to do this, etc. That is good too, but that's that short term. The long term, looking toward the future anterior, is this huge system which allows us to live, as it were. So I can't go on anymore. Your question was very powerful and wonderful, and I hope at least I've given some, little fragmentary answers.
And Professor Pym, did you want to respond to her earlier comment about the enculturation? Or was that so long?
Anthropophagia, yeah.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's actually mentioned. Except the declaration, I only love that which is not mine. That piece, which is from the original Surrealist text, that piece I find hard to incorporate. The almost kleptomaniac desire to latch on to anything from non-Brazilian cultures or any this indiscriminate desire to incorporate the other, I can't attach to the particular models that I'm drawing on.